the foot of Har Sinai, Jebel Har, in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula, in the Saudi Arabian Desert, and Professor Aaron Kohler is going to give us a shiur about the location of Har Sinai, or something like that.
That was not right. No, first I did say I should tell you that I read the first half of Rabbi Hull's book, and it's good. That's what I'm obligated to say. So it's good. So it's our car entertainment. And that the first half basically that the Har Sinai is likely in Saudi Arabia, not in Sinai. So that part's good. All right. This is not two things. Not a shiur, and not about Har Sinai in particular, although we'll get to it. But really, I thought we would learn together. So there's a few things. Basically, I just put together a few of the prakim that are relevant. So you have in front of you Shmot Parak Bet, the early story of Moshe. So it gets to Bidyan and the early story from there, and then the story of Matan Torah and Yutet and Kaf. I really imagine this collaboratively, sitting around and reading together. So hopefully that'll be what we'll do. And the key point is you should all say anything that comes to mind. So we'll learn together. I'll start reading, but observations, questions, comments, just throw them out. The idea is that together we should deepen our understanding of the story. This is a really fundamental story that leads up, of course, both to Horeb geographically and to Moshe Rabbenu personally. We were talking a little bit before. I don't remember who I was talking to about Michael. That doesn't mean you have to get up. You were talking when we were in class together. We didn't have cell phones.
I just said to don't. This isn't class, right?
It's not that. The good thing is Michael's invested. Before smartphones, there was nothing to do with
Well, Michael was your student?
Students exaggerating.
You took the class with Professor Kohler?
We sat in class together.
What did he give you?
Those are the good old days.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I think I had a half an hour.
That was
one ruined your 4-0, right?
Oh, dang it.
He did ruin it. I know he won class.
Thank you so much. You're right. Oh, so we were talking about the fact that this parak, this one chapter is like what, 23 psukim or so, and gets us from Moshe's birth at the beginning till his return to Egypt at the end, or almost right after the end, which is when he's 80 years old, or 79 years old. So this one parak covers the first 2/3 of his life. We actually heard earlier that according to Muslim tradition, he was in Midian for 14 years. The Midrash splits it up into 40, 40, 40. But whatever it is, this covers the first 2/3 of his life. So the reason I say that is that means, we were saying, the Torah is incredibly selective of what it tells us about Moshe's life. Just very few details of everything leading up to Moshe being sent back to Egypt. So I have to assume, purely on literary grounds, that the Torah is telling us things that are significant. But they're not obviously significant. So I'd say the big overarching question is, what's significant about these anecdotes? You divide it up as basically like 5 or 6 little paragraphs about Moshe's life. It's got to be telling us something, painting a portrait of someone who winds up being Moshe Rabbenu. But what that portrait is exactly the overarching question I want to lead with. So with that, we can jump in. Anyone else want to read? Thank you.
So selective.
Amazing, right? Like no names here whatsoever. Like, a guy from the house of Levi took a woman from Levi, like maybe literally not Levi, or maybe just a woman from the tribe of Levi. And she's pregnant, and she gives birth to a son. Of course, the Midrash finds the name Tov as a name, but shot is that she just saw that he was good. So, of course, on the one level, like every parent sees their child as good. On another level, like something, like she sees something. Again, the Josh is flowing and explains that that's why he couldn't be hidden. But she saw that there was something special about this baby. Still no names whatsoever. She takes a teva. Teva is actually not a common word. There's one other place where teva shows up. Just a really unsubtle place where teva shows up. Yeah.
That's next year's trip to find the ark. Yeah, we're gonna go Mount Ararat. Who's in? Chaim, can I get an amen?
Iranian
Joseph.
He already has them signed up. It's amazing.
Everybody's in. Everybody's hands up. What about Shia? You'll come on that one?
I think it's in Kentucky, actually.
No, there. By the way, if you drive like 2 hours out of DC towards Pittsburgh, there's a person. It says you see they're building the ark. They haven't made any progress since I moved to DC. It's like just they have the metal up.
Oh, it took Noah 120 years.
Yeah,
plenty of time.
That would be trip worthy.
Impatient.
That would be trip worthy. Yeah.
The same thing with Noah, right? Did you ask him why he's building on the teva?
No, but
that's the whole point. You wanted to ask him why he's building on the teva.
All
right. So teva, yeah. So it's actually interesting. Teva is like, first of all, it's an Egyptian loanword, but also there's got to be some literary link between the story of the teva that's saving humanity and the teva that's saving Moshe. That can't be an accident. Even the Chemar and the Zephel, the construction, it's clearly the same. Of course, partly that goes back to the Noah part.
This was in the Gemara.
Maybe you don't imagine a boat exactly. The box. I don't know what that's supposed to look like. But anyway, all right.
We just covered this in the Daf Yomi. The differences between the 3 weeks ago. But so I'll tell you, it was actually the day that Malki got sick. It was the day 7.5 years ago. Yeah.
now
She's here.
Now she's here. Now she's a YouTube star.
What that is, it's actually one of the two places in the Bible, in the Gemara, that we have a midrash, a running midrash on Tanakh. It's those Dafim and Sota on this, and then Esther in the first paragraph of Megillah. It's the only places. Otherwise, midrash is not. We have midrashic comments, but here's the idea of like going pasuk by pasuk and darshaning. Anyway, okay. Yeah. Okay. So she put the baby in it. Put it in the suf. Another good Egyptian word. Suf is the reeds, which of course is relevant for Yam Suf.
How do you know that suf means the reeds? How do we know that? I'm saying.
Oh, how do we know? First of all, you have a pasuk like this. So put him in the suf al sfat hayor. So you go to the side of the Nile, and what you find is a lot of reeds.
Okay.
But this is obviously not the only context. That's why Yam Suf is sometimes translated Sea of Reeds. Right.
I was just wondering if there's another way we could translate Yam Suf other than Sea of Reeds to make it fit our theory from today.
That is a good methodological principle. Yeah. Sea of those things.
What's EDS?
Eastern Daylight Savings Time.
All right. Then we can go on. And his sister, of course, stands there to see what will happen to him. So we don't know much about the family. We know that he has a sister who's obviously older. Obviously, these, a lot of these gaps will fill in even later. You don't have to go to the garage. But later in the story, we find out who his sister is and so on. But at this point, we get very little details. He does have a sister, and she wants to know what happens to him. All right. You know, already the next paragraph. You were volunteering. You were with your eyes. Great. Go ahead.
As you say, she's hearing impaired.
Let me pause that. It's really fascinating to see. So another anonymous person, I have to say that Paro, one of the annoying things to the story is that Paro is not. Torah just give us a name, like, it's a different ballgame. But this actually reflects Egyptian practice. We don't get, but we have obviously names from the beginning, but the way names are given actually switches in the, it's probably called the third intermediate period. Not so interesting, but basically around the time of David and Shlomo. And from that point on, we do get names. And in Tanakh, from that point on, we get names. So we get like Paro Shisha, who invades Israel, and we get
Paro Nachol.
What do you say?
Paro Nachol.
Paro Nachol with Yoshiyahu, right? And Yirmiyahu mentioned one other. Big right now. So it's top 10. But earlier on, we never get names, right? So Avram goes down, no names for the Paro. Yosef's there, no names for the Paro. Yitzias Mitzrayim, no names for the Paro, which is, annoying. but it does reflect the Egyptian practice. And obviously his daughter doesn't have a name here either. Again, later Midrash actually gives us, like, equates it with someone mentioned in Devrei Yamim named Bitya, who's the daughter of an Egyptian. And anyway, okay, so Bat Paro goes down to the Chotzalia Or, and she has her maidservants there.
Right, so wait. So when people call her Batya, that's just a mistake.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Like
and how did that develop? Because it's from Bat.
So the Medrash already says that that Bat Paro is Batya. Not the Medrash would have said Bitya because that's the name in Devrei Yamim.
The name appears twice in the Tanakh, in the Talmud. Batya appears twice in the Talmud. Bitya appears twice. They call her Bitya in the Gemara.
Yeah.
Asiya?
But identifying this Bat Paro as Bitya is in the Midrash. It's not. I actually don't know when the pronunciation Basya developed because it's both with a Firik and with a negation on the top, Bitya. So I assume it's just from like reading. Like people didn't, people read the Medrash without knowing Tanakh, so they said Basya. But I actually don't know if there's anything more to it than that. But the Shachat Amatar again brings the Midrash playing on the different words of Amma, or hand, but Amma meaning an Amma, or maidservant. So Bat Paro is bathing, which she's not wading out like you guys did into the, certainly not like Rabbi Rizzo, all the way out. There's no way she's doing that. So she sends her maidservant to go see, and she opens it and she sees, which sounds like it's actually closed. It's covered somehow. And she sees a yellow. Nahar Bofa, the change of yellow to Nahar is interesting. And she says, Mialdea Ivrimte. How does she know? What do you think?
She saw, the Gemara says she saw his bris. She saw his bris because he was born circumcised. The Gemara in Sota.
Parents wouldn't want to circumcised.
I'm just saying, but the Gemara, once the Gemara says it says he was born circumcised. The other reason is, Gemara says she noticed that probably the real reason is because that's what the Jewish people did to their babies because they were being slaughtered.
Definitely a shot, right? Like why?
There's a book. Do you ever read this book by a man named Boswell about lost children of the Middle Ages? That people used to abandon their children because today, like, you have social services, but if you had a kid and you couldn't do it, they just abandoned them.
Yeah, they bring them to the church. No?
They would bring, or anywhere, and some of those people then probably claimed that it was the Jews who killed their kids because they were embarrassed to say they did that.
Yeah.
But this one, she abandoned her son.
All right. So she says, but we already told, but she has kitty. And then the sister runs up, or you imagine. And it's like brilliant. Wow. Brilliant plot, right? So
what does Alma mean?
Alma really means young woman. Isaiah 7:14.
That's
there we go.
But even there, there's a really easy way to say, even if it means virgin. There's a really easy way for a virgin to become pregnant. She just has to sleep with someone. It's not that complicated. Like,
oh, I see what you're saying.
like, no one says she's still going to be a virgin then. Anyway, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's really brilliant twist, right? So you get obviously Bat Paro does not give birth. She can't nurse. So you need a nursemaid if she's going to take care of the baby. And not only is she going to need a nursemaid, but this also, you imagine she has a moment of compassion. But how far are you going to take your moment of compassion? We all have moments of compassion that we drop as soon as we think of it. Because it's like, oh, I can, too much work, right? But so she's like, wait, hold on. You're right now. You have that moment of compassion. We can make this work, right? I know someone. She can nurse. Great. And then we have this crazy result that the baby is being brought up by his biological mother in the guise of a nursemaid, and sort of ostensibly no one knows who the baby is. It was abandoned, but actually both the nurse mother and the biological mother are the same person. Freud loved the story for these reasons, right? Like, I love that book.
What do you love about that book?
Maybe we'll come back to it actually. I'll tell you, it's a very subversive theory, but it's quite brilliant in reading some of these aspects. Okay, so great. So we actually don't know at this point whether Moshe is ever going to go back to Bat Paro. I mean, Bat Paro's relationship at this point consists of about 5 minutes, where she saw him, pitied him, essentially said, "This baby can live. I guess I'll pay for his upkeep, so take it." That's it, right? So we don't know what the future is going to hold. And that brings us to the next part. One more. This point, I think, is actually meant to be pretty dramatic. Because you imagine the mother, the nurse, bringing him back to Bat Paro because that's the only way this kid can be able to stay alive, right? She can't raise a kid. Read kids. She's not allowed to. So in the meantime, when you get to come and say, "Hey, you're the baby," she say, "No. It's I'm just nursing, right? It's not my baby." But then obviously at some point, 2, 3, 4 years, you got to bring him back, and then you have to know this princess is going to say, "Oh yeah, I'm taking responsibility for this baby," because I guess now not a baby, or is going to say, "You're on your own. Like I'm sorry. That was 4 years ago. I moved on. I have my own kids. Like I'm not."
So
but no, but you love it. Like she actually takes it, which
is the name Moshe Hebrew?
Yeah. So what's with the name Moshe? Vasikrashmo Moshe, right? So this has already been noticed by a lot of people. That first of all, just based on who names him.
But it says Ki Min Hamayim Mishitiyu, which is Hebrew.
Right. So there's a lot of things going on.
And Moshe and Chazal give him a Hebrew name, Tuvia.
That's based on the Tov at the top.
But the Chazal say that was his Hebrew name.
Right. So, but they're observing what modern scholars are also observing, that if the daughter of Pharaoh gives him the name Moshe, that ought not to be a Hebrew name. Right? That should be an Egyptian name. So Chazal are basically saying, okay, but what did his mother name him for the first 3 months? No one goes 3 months without naming a baby. So what did she name him? He must have had a Hebrew name. I don't know. Set that Hebrew name aside, because even if that's true, and I think I all road through Freud here, but even if it's true, it's amazing that when he comes back and becomes the leader of Bnei Israel, he doesn't take a Hebrew name. He sticks with Moshe, which is kind of amazing. So of course, so Ibn Ezra already points out, first of all, it's about Paro giving a name that ought to be an Egyptian name. Also, Moshe, if it's Hebrew, and you're sort of parsing your Hebrew verbs, so you can all replicate what Ibn Ezra does. Like, what would you say about the name Moshe? If it's a verb from a root like Mishitihu. Yeah, that it sounds like an active word, right? Like Mishitihu, so Moshe is the one who draws out. Not Ibn Ezra said exactly, like Mashui, the one who is drawn out. So a lot of things
But does it have a cognate in Egypt, in Egyptian names?
Yeah. So all of that's like in the background. Like again, the Rishonim they were just smart people who read very carefully, right? So Ibn Ezra's like, oh, it's not cohering all that well. Then you put together in the 19th century. So we just had the bicentennial of the decipherment of hieroglyphs. So after the hieroglyphs are deciphered, suddenly we know Egyptian language. It's like, oh, wait a second. So it's not just this like thought in the air. This sounds like it ought to be Egyptian. Like, well, let's see. We can read Egyptian. What? And it turns out that Moshe, the shin sin, it's like somewhere in between there, but means born of or a child. And not only is it a really common word, but it's the name that's in like Ramesses, Ra Mesu, born of Ra, or osmosis is Toph Mesu, born of Toph, the god. So it's a common word, meaning it could just mean child, but it could also be half the name, like born of someone, born of even a god. She's the daughter of Pharaoh, she's the princess. I mean, who's she naming?
The context of the story needs to be shrouded mystery anyway.
Shouldn't it be?
Oh,
interesting. Yeah, you could float a hypothesis that this really only has his name. So going back to the Jewish part, like maybe in the Egyptian palace he was named something like Ra Mesu, but once he becomes the leader of Bnei Israel, they're like, we're not calling our leader born of Ra. Like that much is too much. Drop the Ra part. Or who knows? Maybe this is the whole name. It's not really known.
It is interesting that in the Gemara, there's nobody named Moshe. Right, Patel? There's no Amora named Moshe in the Tanaim. There's all the other names. We have other names,
the weird one, right?
But we don't have.
Well, that's why it's not even such a crazy thing to say.
They do say
Moshe. Like there's still one.
There was no other Moshe. There was.
No, it's really only once they come back to the Islamic world that Jews take the name Musa.
To start copying Muhammad's being named Muhammad. So they start saying, well, we have a prophet too. We name him Moshe.
I don't know. Well, Musa is also a Muslim name.
Oh, a Muslim name.
I don't know that whole story. So the Netziv is actually the first sort of traditional Jewish commentator who brings in knowledge of Egyptian. He says he learned it from a guy named Rabbi Shmuel of Beihai, who I've tried to track down, but I can't. That's not a ton of information. Who tells him that Moshe in the Egyptian language means yellow, which is exactly right. And so he says, and the Netziv says, wait a second, so what do you do with Kimin and Mayim Shitziyu? And he says, well, this is the way the Torah does things all the time. Basically, what we would call folk etymology, right? Like it connects, or we would call Lashon Nofel Lashon. Like it's a word that's sort of similar and evokes some important theme in the story, right? So he names a couple of instances like Migdal Bavel, Hisham Balal, Spata, right? But of course, Bavel and Balal are not the same word. And it's like, it's fine. Like, it's a play on words, right? So Bavel is a really old name. I mean, the Babylonians have a folk etymology of where the name Bavel comes from already. They don't know where the name comes from. So they actually call it, they say it comes from Bab Eli, Shar Elohim, which is probably what Yaakov's playing on when he says Shar Hashemayim. So Bavel comes from Balal. That's what the Torah is trying to say, right? Like big tower in the middle of Mesopotamia. We know there was civilization. It's not actually good. Which is a story that gives an explanation for where something comes from. Right. So some of them could be accurate. Right. Just a geological story. This means this is where it came from. Like sometimes it's right. Right.
Also, exactly. Key doesn't have to mean because. So Kimin Amayim Meshitiyu, it can mean be like.
Because we don't know what it is. It came from water. As long as it's
Egyptian. See, that's why that man got an A from you. Listen to that. That's beautiful. Brilliant. That's what you do when you take 2 classes.
Yeah. No, it is very interesting. I think it's very fascinating. Besides maybe we'll see how this plays out in the next paragraph. But I think one of the things that this really brings to the surface is Moshe's very complicated identity in this parak. Like, is he Egyptian? Does he know that he's not Egyptian? Like, if he has an Egyptian name, he's raised in a palace since age 2 or 3. who tells them he's not Egyptian? Think of I don't know if this is personal for anyone, so feel free to say so or not say so. But kids who are adopted who find out later that their identity is not what they thought. Like, whoa, that's not always easy. Yeah, that's the next one. That's the next one. Yeah. Right. So maybe we'll read it. You want to read the next one? That's what I think it comes to a head. I think it's really fascinating. Actually, pause there already, just on that one. Because when we read Vayetze Elechav, who did that? Right? So we take it for granted that it's the other Hebrews. Like that's, we know who his real Achim are. But does he know that? Like it's totally yeah. I think that's true. And then the next half of the pasuk, when you see the Mishnah 3, that thing is unambiguous. It's still not clear, even if it's clear to us that the narrator calls them Echav. It's not actually clear that he knows that they're Echav. That's actually not as explicit as we would have liked.
That's right.
I can tell you that the Egyptians, in their art, draw the Canaanites different. They have a little bit thinner, lighter skin color. They have short beards, whereas the Egyptians tend to be clean shaven. And they have this like a distinctive hairstyle. I don't know what to make of. They also have different clothes.
Yeah, the Canaanites.
You never know how. Well, I should say the art is it's stereotyped, right? So it doesn't mean that every Canaanite looks this way and every Egyptian looks that way, but it's sort of their stereotype. So then it's like you want to mark the Canaanite, this is how you do it. You draw them like skin this way, beard that way. Possible. I mean, skin color is not, how many generations does it take? We're not talking about
Would you let us color in the pictures?
Canaanite. The Egyptians are really like
Stage like it's typically in society.
they didn't have the same. I mean, that obviously developed to a certain point. It's, they observe differences in skin color, the same way the Gemara does, but it's not like race in the way that we have it as the Gemara. It's like they basically have like northern Syrians who are fairly lighter, like there's like northern Syria, Turkey, Canaanites who are somewhat darker, Egyptians who are like ruddy, and then Nubians, Kush, who are black. And they're paintings where they're all together, like they mark them as different, like noticeably different, but there's no judgment that like this is better than that, other than Egyptians are better than everyone because we're Egyptian. That's not doing it. An ontological truth.
I would add something, facilitated that and then facilitated an ongoing relationship. And I could be the one to stay in there, and then I could be enough to try to find the princess, make sure I would.
It's a plausible thing. Not a crazy thing. That's true. All right. Yeah, I guess we should pause. This is a kind of crazy thing to do, right? So he goes out and he sees an Egyptian hitting a Hebrew of his brethren. He looks both ways. He sees that there's no one else there. And so he smites the Egyptian and buries him in the sand. Which is crazy. I mean, that's just a crazy turn of events. On the one hand, he's from the palace. Probably like, who's this guy? Like, even if he's an important foreman in a work chain gang, I mean, I don't think we have to worry about the judicial system being, not playing favorites. Like there's no reason to worry about that. But it's crazy that he was moved this way, right? And you get the impression it's not totally an act of passion. He does look around. But on the other hand, there's not a lot of hesitation. He's just like, guy beating guy, must hit him. Which is, I think definitely, we said at the beginning, like we just get a couple of anecdotes about him. This is anecdote one. This is the first time Moshe is actually an agent in the story. So anecdote one about him, he sees the Egyptian beating a Hebrew, and he kills him. He tried to kill him, I have no idea. But he's moved at least enough to do something about this, and then covers it up. So that's anecdote one about Moshe. I didn't hit return after that sentence. Right. That's amazing. Oh, it's amazing. I guess so.
Learned previously that when it says that he looked this way and he looked that way, that there's an idea that he looked into this future.
Rashi brings that.
Yeah. To see what would be the person's fate and whether